Today, we're going to take one of the most foundational stories in all of Western thought and really pull it apart to see what it can do for us right now.
We're jumping straight into Plato's Allegory of the Cave from Book 7 of the Republic.
And it's so important to remember when we talk about the ancient Greeks, especially Plato, they didn't see philosophy as this abstract thing you study in a university.
No, not at
They
all.
saw it as a toolkit,
Oh,
a deeply useful skill that was supposed to help everyone, you, me, anyone, figure out how to live and die well.
Plato was passionate about this. He saw philosophy as a kind of therapy for the soul.
Exactly. And this allegory, this story he gives us, was designed specifically, and he says this, to compare the effect of education and the lack of it on our nature. So we're going right into that source material.
What's fascinating here is that the Allegory of the Cave, it isn't just a story, it's a map. It's a map of how human delusion works, why we believe the things we believe.
And why it's so hard to change our minds.
Right. So, our mission today is to follow that journey, this really painful journey from the dark, from these cultural assumptions, into what Plato calls the light of reason.
Okay, so let's start at the bottom. In the cave itself, Plato asks us to imagine people living in this underground space.
A subterranean cave.
And they've been there their entire lives. They're shackled, actually, since they were children.
And their heads are fixed so they can only look in one direction.
Straight ahead, at the back wall of the cave. That's all they can see.
It's a very bleak image. Dark, damp walls, no natural light.
And they aren't seeing the world directly. All they see, their entire reality, comes from shadows.
Yes. Behind them, there's a fire. And between the prisoners and that fire, people are walking back and forth carrying things.
Statues, basically.
Yeah.
Sculptures of animals, plants, people.
And the prisoners, they only see the two-dimensional flickering reflections of those objects projected onto the wall in front of them.
And this is the brilliant part of this setup. It establishes the central delusion immediately.
It does, because for these cave dwellers, the shadows aren't just shadows, they are reality. It's all they've ever known.
They have no other frame of reference.
None. So they become completely fascinated by these flickering shapes. They think these phantoms are the real thing.
And they build a whole culture around it.
A very sophisticated culture. They believe that if they pay really close attention to these shadows, which one comes next, which ones appear together, that they will understand the world and, succeed in life.
They're basically shadow analysts.
They are. And they chat about these shadowy things with great enthusiasm. They take immense pride in their sophistication and their wisdom about the phantoms.
They're experts in a world that is fundamentally not real.
And Plato is making a very clear point there. The shadows are just sense perception. It's the lowest possible level of reality.
So they see the shadow of a horse.
But they have no idea what horseness is. The form, the idea, the blueprint that makes a horse a horse. They mistake the appearance for the essence.
Okay, so let's move to the escape. The ascent. By chance, one person is freed, unshackled.
And he discovers a way out, this steep, rough path leading up into the open air.
But that first moment, it's not glorious, it's brutal.
It is. Plato is very clear about this. The light is simply overwhelming.
The person is totally dazzled by the sunshine. It's painful, it's disorienting. He actually wants to run back into the cave.
Back into the familiar darkness. I mean, that's such a powerful insight into human nature, isn't it? We often prefer a comfortable lie to a painful truth.
Absolutely. But gradually his eyes begin to adjust.
And as they do, he starts to see the actual real forms of everything he'd only known as a shadow before.
So instead of a gray silhouette, he sees a real flower.
With actual color
Yeah.
and depth. He sees the shimmer on a bird's wings, the texture of tree bark, things he couldn't have even imagined.
He's moved from a two-dimensional world to a three-dimensional one.
Illuminated by the sun, which in the allegory represents the ultimate truth, the form of the good, the source of all reason.
He also looks up at the stars, the universe, and just grasps the sheer scale of reality.
He's moved from appearance to essence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because in a modern story, this person would probably stay up there, enjoy the view.
Maybe start a wellness brand.
Right. But the philosopher, the enlightened person, doesn't do that.
No. Plato says that out of compassion, a deeply moral drive, he decides to leave the sunlit world and go back down.
He wants to help his companions, who are still, as Plato puts it, mired in confusion and error.
And the return journey is a disaster, an absolute catastrophe.
Because now his eyes are used to the bright light. when he goes back into the darkness of the cave.
He can barely see a thing. He's stumbling around, bumping into walls. To the others, the experts in the shadows, he looks ridiculous.
It looks totally unimpressive, clumsy,
Uh,
confused. He can't play their game anymore.
he can't. And their reaction is, well, it's swift and it's brutal. When he tries to explain what he's seen, what the sun is, or what a real tree looks like,
They don't just disagree
no. First, they're sarcastic. They laugh at him. Then they get angry.
because he's a threat. He's challenging their entire reality, their expertise.
Exactly. And eventually, they plot to kill him.
And this is so personal for Plato, isn't it? This isn't just a hypothetical.
Not at all. Plato knew this reaction firsthand because Athens had recently done exactly that. They put his friend, his mentor, Socrates, to death.
For doing the very same thing, for trying to tell people they were wrong about things like justice and piety.
So this is Plato's warning. This is what all truth tellers can expect when they bring knowledge to people who haven't done the work themselves.
Okay, so let's bring this into our world. Plato is arguing that the cave is our default setting. We are all, for much of our lives, staring at shadows.
The cave dwellers are simply humans before philosophy, and the sun is the light of reason.
So what are the shadows on our modern cave walls? I mean, we absolutely have them.
We do. Think about the things our culture tells us to chase, the things we get so excited about.
Fame, for example.
Fame is a perfect one. Or the perfect partner, a high status job, absolute political certainty. Plato would say these are infinitely less real than we suppose.
They're phantoms, projected by our culture onto the walls of our fragile and flawed minds.
Yes, and they're phantoms not because they don't exist, but because we mistake the reflection for the real thing. Take the high status job.
Okay.
The shadow on the wall promises fulfillment, respect, happiness, so we chase it.
And when we get it,
Often we find burnout, stress, office politics, the fulfillment we were promised. It's not inherent in the job itself. That was just the shadow. The real thing was maybe meaningful work or learning a skill, but we were chasing the status. We were chasing the phantom.
that makes so much sense. And it explains the disappointment. You know, you get the thing you thought you wanted and you feel empty.
Because you grab the shadow, not the substance. And Plato is very careful to say it's not our fault individually.
Right.
No one chooses to be in the cave. That's just where we happen to begin. Our starting point is, by nature, one of confusion.
Okay, so we're in the cave. We've established that. And we know that just grabbing people and try to drag them out.
Leads to your own death.
Right. So the method matters. The lesson Plato learned from Socrates' death wasn't just that truth is dangerous. It was about the failure of delivery.
Exactly. If you just go around bluntly telling people they're wrong, that their politics are an illusion, or their career goals are phantoms, you just make them defensive.
You cause offense, and you get nowhere.
So Plato argues for a gentle road out, a process of carefully administered philosophical education, and that is the Socratic method.
And the first step is so counterintuitive, especially today. It's intellectual modesty.
Yes. Wisdom, for Socrates, begins with admitting your own ignorance.
So you don't start by saying, I have the truth, you're wrong. You start by saying, I'm not sure I know what true justice is, or I don't know exactly how a good relationship works. Let's talk about it.
You lead with your own uncertainty. It builds trust. Then you ask the other person to state their opinion.
Even if they're painfully overconfident.
Especially then. And here's the hardest part. You have to be supremely patient.
You can't get frustrated.
You have to be ready to have these chats over many days. When they go off on a tangent, you cheerfully double back to the core question. It's a slow, deliberate process.
But isn't there a risk of it being manipulative? I mean, if you, the philosopher, already know what you think the truth is, aren't you just leading them to your conclusion?
That's a great question. But the core faith of the Socratic method isn't that you give them the answer. It's the belief that people can detect errors in their own reasoning.
If you just draw their attention to it.
Gently. You just ask questions. You say, okay, so you define justice as X. But over here, you said Y. How do those two things fit together? You don't tell them they're wrong. You help them see the contradiction in their own logic.
So the realization comes from them. It's self-discovery.
It has to be. That's the only way it works. And, crucially, you must not cast blame or ever get annoyed. You'll never teach anyone anything by making them feel stupid. The moment someone feels attacked or humiliated, they retreat. They go deeper into the cave.
They pull their chains tighter.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Plato's insight is that we have all started in that cave. It's the human condition. But his most profound message is that we don't have to stay there.
The road out is philosophy.
Administered with patience and method, it's the light that helps the proper nature of things can become clear.
So Plato shows us that if you just bluntly state the truth, people might, well, try to kill you. But if you approach them with real patience and gentleness, guiding them to ask their own questions, they might eventually turn toward the sun on their own.
That's the hope.
So for everyone listening, we encourage you to think about this.
Yeah.
What is an immediate, high-status belief projected by your culture right now? A modern phantom about success, or happiness, or what's right? They might take the most Socratic patience to even begin to question in yourself or in others.
That's the starting point.
That painful but necessary first step toward the light. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Plato's Allegory of the Cave.
We'll see you next time.